since we are at the end of the year, we figured we'd give our top five and bottom five movies of the year. It's that time of the year, so let's do a little 2025 wrap up. Uh, we could just go like I'll do one, you do one, you do it like that. Now these movies, we'll do our bottom five first. I'll just say for me that these movies are not in any specific order. I just listed five movies that I was disappointed in for the year. So, at number five, I'm going with the movie Him. That was the football horror movie with, I think it was Marlon Wayans. Marlon Wayans, yeah, definitely Marlon Wayans.
Yep.
And for me, it got to my bottom five basically because I feel like the movie was marketed like as a sports horror movie, and there's barely any sports in the movie. I wasn't a super fan of the main character's performance. I thought he was pretty flat and unemotional. And really, the horror elements never escalate for me. There's no memorable scares or any real tension in the movie. Main character just kind of goes from one scene to another. So that's why I didn't really like it and why it landed in my bottom five. It was a promising concept, but amateur execution, in my opinion. What about you, sir?
So I actually did have that same exact movie
Oh, wow.
in my bottom five as well. So I'm going to just kind of continue. So might as well talk about that while we're on the subject. I said this movie was actually only 1 to 2 minutes away from being at the top of my list. If they had added a scene to where we got to see the main character playing some football after his training, then this movie would have likely been near the top of my list. And I watched the entire movie of him training to play football, and then I never saw him play football in the big leagues, and for that reason, I put it in the bottom five. So this is one of those movies where an extra like 2-3 minutes of the movie showing him play some good football would have literally put it from my bottom five to my top five, but there you have it. From the version I saw, he played no football, and I put it in the bottom.
All right. So my number four movie, we actually saw this movie towards the beginning of the year. I don't know if you remember it, but Flight Risk with Mark Wahlberg. Yeah, terrible movie. It got to the bottom five for me because, well, one, the confined airplane setting, wasn't a fan of it, and it was way too long in the airplane. It was like almost like a bottleneck feeling. Like, I felt claustrophobic watching this movie. That's how much time they spent in the airplane. And the action scenes are very little, no creativity to them. And despite like the whole hijacking premises, there was no tension in this movie at all. And then the ending was just awful, awful ending. So this movie definitely lands in my bottom five. It's a thriller that never delivers on any thrills. What about you, sir?
Yeah, so one more than I had in my bottom five, in no particular order, I'm gonna say, so there was this movie that we saw, The Naked Gun. This movie had comedy, which was just way too over the top for me. I admit some parts were funny, and others were simply like corny or way too over the top. I don't find these kinds of movies too appealing, so I put it in my bottom five. It was just something that was way too over the top for my taste, and, I could have easily watched it on streaming or maybe even not watched it at all. Just not my not my cup of tea, that movie.
All right. I actually like that movie. I wouldn't put it in my top five, but I thought it was serviceable. All right, in the number three slot, I've got Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. It lands here basically because it was very boring and not a lot of action. I feel like they tried to carry a lot of the story with the narrative, which wasn't strong enough for me. And it definitely was nowhere near as good as the first one. So for that, it got on my bottom five list, and it's just a
franchise finale that feels oddly muted. Like, I don't know what they were thinking with that one, but what about you, sir? What's in your three slot?
Number three, I want to say that movie we saw, Caught Stealing. It was pretty underwhelming. The trailer made it look like it had a ton of action. When I actually watched the movie, there were action sequences throughout, but most of the movie, the main character barely gets in a fight or shoots anyone, which is super misleading for hardcore action fans, and I put it in my bottom five for that reason. It was just like it was more like a skate movie, like a drugs and stuff. Like it wasn't an action movie, and the trailer made it look like an action movie. So I came in there with expectations that were horribly, it just missed horribly for me.
Got it. My number two slot is Mickey 17. This movie got on my bottom five because, well, for one, Mark Ruffalo's performance was absolutely terrible in this movie. Uh, I don't know how true this is, but a lot of people were saying like his character was supposed to be like framed after Trump. I'm not sure, but either way, it was just terrible. And I didn't like that, like the premise of the movie. The guy Robert Patterson played, he was like supposed to be a clone or something of all these different versions of him that died. And they didn't show a lot of the deaths in the movie. I thought that that was a wasted opportunity for sure. And just like overall, the movie was just not that great. You know, it came out a while ago, so I'm not sure if people got to see it. But if you have time, I mean, I wouldn't recommend it. But if you're listening to the review and, you know, it sounds like something that might pique your interest, definitely see it. But definitely was not that good for me. What about you, sir? Your number two.
I want to say we saw that movie The Smashing Machine with Dwayne Johnson and Emily Blunt. It was a good movie. It had like great performances and depth and a story. And I think the only reason this movie's in the bottom five is because other movies that I've seen this year, such as Fantastic Four, Superman, Tron, they simply had much bigger budgets. And this movie simply couldn't compete. But I thoroughly enjoyed it though, and I think it must have gave it at least a 7 or 8 out of 10 when I did the review. It was well done, but I wish there were some more intricate hand-to-hand MMA action. The drama and the relation stuff was on point. I just wish it had something more hardcore for the really hardcore fight fans. And so I put it in my bottom five just because movies, I didn't see so many movies this year. And so kind of just had to, some other movies beat it out.
All right, shocker there. I like that movie. All right, at my number one spot. And like I said, this is not like a rank. It's just the one spot. But Thunderbolts from Marvel, definitely one of the most disappointing Marvel movies to me. It was like, I don't know, these dudes were just so emotional, and the movie was pretty bland. And they didn't even have a real villain fight. It was just like they talked the villain down, and they do that in a lot of Marvel movies, but I don't know, I just wasn't a big fan. It was a very disappointing movie for them to team all those people up and not deliver on something action packed and something that felt more like a therapy session. I just wasn't feeling it. What about you, Sarah? What's your number one?
So, yeah, I had them in no particular order. This is just like the fifth one that I'm going to mention. There was that movie, The Running Man. This was actually a really good movie, too. The only thing is that I've seen it done before. It didn't strike me as an action movie in particular. They called it a roadie movie, I think, which is like a person who's like on the run, on the road, which is something between like action and suspense. My list of movies this year that I chose to see was very exclusive, and so this one was in the bottom five mostly because it couldn't compete with other movies on the list. Putting this action suspense movie versus like, for instance, Predator Badlands. I watched Predator Badlands again over this one anytime. So Running Man, this was the one where the guy was like in a game. It was like a game where you have to kind of just like survive. And yeah, it was kind of like, He was more like a running away, trying to survive. But there were some good action sequences, and I just put it in my bottom five because again, it was kind of a miss for me. I still gave it like a 7 or 8 out of 10, but it was still kind of a miss for me from what I expected it to be.
All right, and I agree. I was not a fan of that movie.